All right, so this is my play reflections and recap of Dark Age of Man Chronicles 2, Session 2, Saints and Sinners. We played and streamed this live Saturday afternoon, this last Saturday afternoon, obviously. I believe Dale has uploaded the two recorded pieces of that in two different pieces. One is the session, one is our post-mortem conversation, our after-session chat. The entirety, though, the live stream can be seen on Chalice and Chain, Sam's channel, all 3 hours and something unclipped, right? Okay. So again, we're playing our game, Dark Age of Man. I play Janice, a merchant from London who's attempting in Dredgewater to build trade networks. I am a trader in rare spices, and I'm hoping to work my way up through Dredge and, of course, into the north. However, my main goal is to have hunted down the high repute bishop of Athelwald, who is known to be a living saint and that has actually performed miracles. And my character has come here hoping that he could be cured of his sickness, his illness, and is sick and is dying, etc., or is at least affected by this illness. And so that's my other real motivation for coming to Dredgewater. Unfortunately, Bishop Athelwald vanished about 6 months ago, and I did not know that as my characters arrived. Dale's playing the monk, brother Boethus, and of course, Sam is our presenter, and he has done a brilliant job. So, first session was remarkable, as we only had maybe 3 meta moments. I mean, 3 periods in which we actually had to have kind of meta conversation about the situation or dice, etc. The second session is what quickly became a more complicated scenario, and it did require more meta conversation. Not so much in the initial beginnings, but later as we dredged on, there was a little more meta, a little more traditional kind of meta gaming, but which is fine. It worked great. It doesn't affect my in-character play in the slightest. So the first session ended where my character ordered Yami to bring a troublemaker to me by any means necessary. I wanted him to hamstring him, so jump on him in this melee, this scrum, the riot, so to speak. This guy's involved in a riot. My character has seen him take coin from an alderman that we know is hostile to our young lord, or I should say the young lord of Dredgewater. And so I ordered him to grab him. If you have to, you hamstring him and you drag him to me. I'm going to interrogate him on behalf of Lord Weswell. Well, so we opened in session 2 in that melee, that scrum. And Yami very quickly makes very quick work of the Dane. Unfortunately, a pagan is killed between the two in the melee as Yami uses the pagan as a victim and kicks him upon the spear of the and a positive critical check for me. I rolled a positive rebuke of an attack, and instead of making that a critical damage to the Dane, I narrated that as me kicking a pagan onto the spear tip, and Sam took that narrative to the next critical phase, which is he ends up in the mud on the ground underneath the body of this pagan, and we apprehend in this scrum, this melee, we apprehend this Dane, who, again, I've seen taking coin and believe has started this trouble, or is at least hoping to gain some advantage when this trouble starts. For the lack of a better term, his boss, Lord Eric of Howardtown, witnesses this. They all come running to this event. The whole town, really, as the bell was being hammered upon by a panicked Boethus as he was trying to break up this trouble, and then realized that the pagan showed up armed, that he went into the abbey and locked the doors down. But the whole town at that point was kind of brought to this, including the Lord Wesweld. And as they approach, he hears Lord Eric accusing me of assaulting his bodyguard, the Dane. We don't know his name. And of course, accuses me of taking the law into my own hands, etc., etc. Lord Wesweld ultimately takes myself and Yami into custody based on these accusations at the actual spot of the riot. And we are hauled up to the Lord's Manor at whatever hour of the evening this is for an immediate, ultimately an immediate hearing. I would call it a hearing, not so much a trial. in front of most of the aldermen that are available, and those important people of the court and those important people of the town that witnessed this. Sam, brilliantly as Wesweld, in character, conducts this. And the first thing he asked me is, what do I have to say for myself? And I immediately present my defense. There are 3 witnesses that will bear witness that we acted on your behalf to stop a usurper from causing problems and maybe great harm to innocents. Well, Wesweld didn't quite agree with my taking the law into my own hands. It was a fantastic, most of the session was this hearing, was this trial. I named 3 witnesses, including Dale's character. Dale's character presented evidence. Dale's character in the mud at the melee had found a missive that had been trampled into the mud, and he has secured that. And later he read the missive. He actually broke the seal and read the missive on the seal, and he learned quite a bit about the Queen of Ireland's troubles as she begs her father of the North to explain why Danes and his men are readily raiding Ireland, her kingdom, and that she's so troubled by what's happening. She has moved her throne to the Eastern throne, which is on the continent of England, as opposed to Ireland in our world, right? Ireland. So she's actually moved to the actual England country in the east to get away from Dublin, her seat in Dublin, which is far more dangerous now. So he has this information, and he knows from this information that she suspects the king is either aware of this in the north, or if he isn't aware of it, why aren't they doing something about it? Why are the men of the north working with the Danes? Okay. So Dale's characters pure pretty fascinating missive from the queen. Okay. A queen. One of the 4 major players in our world, right? Not the Queen of London or the Queen of the Queen of Ireland, right? Who rules alone as her husband's dead. Okay. Okay. What else? Okay, so he testifies. He goes and he reads this missive. He knows that he starts to come back as Janus will not repent. Janus fully tells the truth and admits that I sent Yami to apprehend this man, and I had every intention of stopping the troublemaker. I had every intention of interrogating the troublemaker on behalf of the Lord. Well, it wasn't enough. It wasn't a good defense for the alderman, and Wesweld is in a vice between these aldermen that he suspects are what I've said they are. I've called them in public now serpents, and I've called out young Wesweld as needing to mature as a lord and make the right decision here. Well, put a lot of pressure on Sam as young Wesweld in character to it was not an easy but Janus fully believed what he did right, because he did it on behalf of Lord Wesley, right, Washburn. So he in his mind did nothing wrong, right? So he's going to confess to what happened, but he's not going to confess he did any wrongdoing. Okay. So meanwhile, that puts Wesweld in a position to go ahead and pronounce punishment. He declares that I am banished from Dredge County and Dredgewater from here on, and that I must pay what Lord Aric thinks is a fair punishment. And he demands 25 silver. I tell him there's no way. I'm not going to give him 1 penny in payment, because his Dane was not harmed. And there was no way I was going to pay. So Wesweld then throws me in the stocks with Yami, and to see if cooler heads would prevail in the morning, and to see how they could get from me the value of 25 silver, as I refused to pay, and I refused to give what I might do instead. So I've been sent to the stocks, or the stockade, really. And of course, Boethus is there, and he knows it's raining heavily. He knows how sick my character is, but he also knows that there's no way I will survive in the public stocks overnight with an angry Dane and 2 aldermen who are clearly enemies, at least my enemies, if not actual enemies of Lord Wesley Washburn. He knows I won't survive the night, especially with my jewelry. And because the only thing has been taken from us is our weapons. So we have been thrown in the stocks with my rings and my purse, etc. So he works, and he gets us ultimately out at the sympathetic eye of a guard who turns a blind eye and leaves the keys. And we witness this as he really is sympathetic for whatever reason, this guard was sympathetic to our situation, and he turned a blind eye and he left the keys. And Dale's able to use the keys to get us out. And I leave a ring for the guard as payment for, I leave one of my silver rings as payment. We then, in this horrific deluge and downpour, my character very sick at this point in this humidity and rain, already suffering with some kind of lung disorder. We have to run for the boat, the boat that my character contracted to get to Dredgewater. And we convince the captain of this fishing boat and his son that we must set sail, and he's under contract, and I will pay him handsomely for setting sail in such bad weather, but we must get out of Dredgewater. And so sure enough, we pack up, we head downriver. We're up all night fighting the river. We can't sleep in this nauseating boat ride in a flooding dredge, but we make it all night. We are able to pull ashore, as the captain remembers an old smuggling hole that he used as a young man when they used to smuggle poached fish and etc. in a cave. And as we set foot on ground, we begin the process of unpacking to head to this cave for some safety and some rest. We hear screams, bone-chilling screams. Meanwhile, through all of this, as the lightning would crack in Dredgewater, we would see, Boethus would see images in the lightning flashes of Bishop Aethelwold, either making hand gestures or pointing or standing. And I would see these images as well, but I didn't know it was Bishop Aethelwold. And this, every time the lightning would crack in a particular moment, we would see these images of Bishop Aethelwold. And on top of that, Bishop Aethelwold is actually speaking to Dell's character. He's hearing Brother Aethelwold in his head. He's whispering, like standing right behind him, whispering, and he's hearing him in his head. And he's being constantly reminded of these lectures of Bishop Aethelwold about how to conduct yourself as a Christian and a monk and what to do. And so on top of all of this going on, Dell's character is basically got Bishop Aethelwold's, the spirit of Brother Bishop Aethelwold, constantly in his consciousness, right? And if we're not reminded visually by these images of him in a flash, he's certainly getting it audibly, which is, again, a brilliant piece of that. And that was on the random seed generator. That was one of the things he rolled, the spirit of Brother Aethelwold. So this is how he presented that in session, as these visions and as this of Aethelwold talking really to Dell's monk. Amazing. Okay. So we hear these screams. We have no weaponry. Yuri has a dagger, and Yuri's going to run toward the screams as he doesn't want it. He's hearing a young woman scream, and I stop him, and we take the dagger away, and I give it to Yami, and I order Yami, go investigate the scream. So I send my bodyguard into the brush toward this cave, and in a few moments he returns with his hands bloodied, his soiled in blood, carrying a young roughly 12-year-old girl who is almost catatonic. Sets her down on the ground. Boethus instantly becomes protective of her, and he rushes to her, and she, of course, in a panic, scrambles to get away from him. She does not want to be touched. Yami tells me we cannot go back to that cave, bad things. And I didn't ask him to elaborate. What did you see? What happened? I stopped Yami basically and said, okay, I hear you. We're not going back to the cave. He's covered in blood that's not his or the girl's. So I'm a pretty savvy guy. My guard is a pretty badass. So I assume he has dispatched some trouble, or he's fought off some trouble on behalf of the girl, brought her to us. Well, Boethus thinks Yami is the source of her problem. So he gets up and he makes accusations and insinuations toward me toward Yami via me, because Yami can't understand him. And of course, I don't repeat any of that to Yami. I pretty much disregard him. I tell him, you need to calm down and you need to take care of the girl. And he turns to the girl in Gaelic, speaks Gaelic. She's asking for prayers, and so he begins to pray with her, but she won't let him touch her. I know Gaelic, but I do not let them know I know what she's saying, and I do not let so no one in our group knows that I'm understanding what the girl's saying. We rest as long as we can. We discuss this. Yuri wants to go back to the cave again. We convince him ultimately it's not the right way to go, so we need to portage downstream further to get away from this cave and get some rest, and we'll meet back up. So Yuri and I back on the boat, as my character's really not in any kind of shape to walk, and we head down the river while Yami and the boy Cole escort the monk and the girl further downstream, and we meet up. And we meet up there. We decide that Yuri reminds us there's a village not far from here where we can get respite, and we can find out more about what's been going on in the area, etc. And so we all agree to unpack and head toward this village. Well, not far into this hike toward the village, the girl panics and she runs away from that direction, and she's screaming in Gaelic, "Witch, witch, no witch!" And so my character understands this, and he knows that she's scared of a witch in that general direction. And I basically don't tell them that. I just tell them, well, the girl's clearly, got problems and she doesn't want to head in that direction. But I don't tell them out loud that she's talking about a witch. I'm keeping that to myself for a couple of reasons, right? And that's where the curtain falls on the session, is we're on the road, headed toward a village. The girl refuses to go that way. And there we have it. Great session. This session, again, because of the nature of how it became a more complicated scenarios, required more meta conversation. Again, you can't game without meta. Meta is communication. You just can't. It's not humanly really possible because we're not using scripts. So you're going to have conversation that is meta, right? And that's fine. So more in this session than the first session. I was in character the whole time, phenomenal. So again, when it comes to a few dice rolls and a few meta conversations, that does not draw me out of character. It's fantastic. I think Dell, for the most part, was in character the whole session, and Sam did a brilliant job, I think, from the presenter's seat, naive narrator, rolling those random seeds, injecting them, and playing all the NPCs fairly and from in-character perspective. We had a hearing that went most of the 2 hours and 18 minutes, most of that session was a trial. My character was on trial, and not one dice roll was required to resolve that trial. It was all from because we were all honest. Janice did not attempt to lie, did not attempt to manipulate, did not attempt to change the facts. So there was no reason to call up a die roll. The only thing my character did that might have demanded a die roll was I was insubordinate to the Lord Wesweld, and to the aldermen, who are technically landowners. My character is a traveling merchant with 2 prestige, but he could have called on some luck or prestige checks if he had wanted to see if this shifted the framework or the frame of mind of Wesweld or the alderman, because I was ultimately insubordinate, and I was ultimately refused to. I didn't refuse punishment. I refused to pay, and I did not believe to the bitter end. I still don't, that my character acted, or I acted only in the faith of protecting the Lord and His innocent people. But I couldn't prove that they were actually. There was no way for me to call witnesses that proved that this guy was in cahoots and that he actually was up to no good, right? I mean, there was no evidence that I didn't just send Yami to attack at some poor dumbass that was caught out there, right? Which could still be true, because again, we don't know, right? I don't know. My character doesn't know. Was he actually paid to do this, or was he just there, right? And this is the beautiful thing about the life we live in, right? If you're playing a naive narrator, you're playing from the seat of a character. You take the information you get in the world best you can. You try to make smart decisions. Sometimes you're wrong, right? I've been wrong. I was wrong as Jurgen in our old Lamentations of the Flame Princess game more than once. But being wrong is authentic, because we perceive the world in character, and you make decisions based on the information you get, and you don't always know, or you don't always perceive the information properly. And this is how I play, right? I play from character first. Therefore, I'm sometimes right, sometimes I'm wrong, right? Doesn't matter. I'm playing authentically a character from a character's perspective. Phenomenal. So again, there was a few more dice rolls. I made 3 dice rolls in this whole session. 2 of them were combat rolls, and one was to find out if I knew Gaelic, right? I had a crit success on a language check. Do I know Gaelic? And it was a critical success. Sam then meta asked, "How do you know Gaelic?" That's kind of an old habit from old games. He wouldn't have had to do that. It's a critical success. If I felt like elaborating, I would have. If not, I know Gaelic. That's it. Drop it, right? I mean, maybe my character is actually Gaelic and it grew up and moved it. We don't know how my character knows Gaelic, but it was a critical success. But Sam wanted to hear me explain how I knew Gaelic, and which is fine. But that's very out of context, out of character meta. So that's a normal thing that we generally do in these kind of games. But in our game, all that we know is not only do I know Gaelic, I know Gaelic, man. It's a critical success. So maybe I was raised with a tutor or something that's taught me Gaelic, right? So we didn't need to really identify why I knew Gaelic so well, right? So, but again, these aren't criticisms. It's just an observation that he's not required to do that when I'm successful necessarily, right? Or vice versa when I fail. So, okay, great session. And I don't think Dale rolled the dice but a couple times. So again, we didn't have a lot of challenges, as most of these sessions so far, and having a hearing in which I'm completely honest, and I present three witnesses to test to account for why I did what I did, and why and the fact that I never denied that I sent Yami, and the fact that I didn't deny that Yami attacked him first. But the only thing in question is I took the law into my own hands, and clearly I couldn't prove there was a good reason to do that, and so I should have been punished. And so he never had to make a die roll because I didn't lie, I didn't try to fudge it, and the people that I called as witnesses were honest. So it was really amazing. And he, from Wesweld's seat, Sam, in character as Wesweld, had to make assessments based on no actual social dice rolls. And it is what, to me, is what role playing is all about. Mechanics are useful for checking skills, for combat, for saves, for magic. I don't think we need mechanics for role playing. I grew up playing D&D where there were no mechanics for role playing except reaction table for monsters. In Moldvay or Mincer, you'd make a reaction check with a charisma modifier, right? But even that doesn't describe intently in the rules that you should use this for all social encounters. It's optional, so to speak. I've used it to make judgments that I don't want to do as a GM. I don't want to just declare they're hostile, etc. But the reality is I grew up gaming where the only mechanics centered around the things that we needed to resolve, like combat or saving throws, etc. We role played. You took a character, you role played them, you made actions based on that, you played from their perspective, and then dice only came into play to resolve the things like combat. We didn't need dice for bluffs and intimidation and checks and charming and all of this stuff. There's a charm spell that directs how charm works. We don't need to make checks, right? You can cast charm without making a roll. They might get a save against charm. I can't remember all the different rules of the OSR charm, but charm defines what charm does when you charm. So again, we don't need those things. And I think those kind of mechanics have grossly, I think, affected the quality of role playing at role playing tables, because people have relied on using mechanics for bluffing and for intimidation and for dialogue and for negotiation, and instead of being a character and role playing, right? And I think those mechanics have done in many ways more harm to actual in-character role play, although they've made games accessible for people who aren't comfortable doing anything but playing a game, right? They want to really play a board game, and they want that board game to actually be D&D, where they play an avatar with a sword and a shield, and they want to kill goblins and stuff, and role playing is the thing, the least reason they're there. And so those kind of effects allow those people who are, or people who are just shy or bashful, who don't really want to role play, right? They don't, I get it. But I think in many ways they have retarded the growth of quality role playing in our so-called role playing games. So, all right, everybody out there, have a great week. And I got to thank Sam again for another brilliant session, and Dale, of course. And thanks again. And we'll keep putting up videos as long as we have something to say. Thanks. Bye-bye.